Warm welcome to a special episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast. We are honored to have Saraswathi Ramachandra on our podcast today morning, and very honored also to have Nidhi Pratapneni, uh, my co-panelist over here. I can say will also interact with Saraswati. So, Nidhi, you can go ahead with the introduction of Saraswati, and then we'll take it forward from there.
Sure. So this will not be a very formal one, but Sarah, as we call her, has been a dear friend from the days of the Free Geeks. So this was a group that Pankaj and Samir had crafted, and these were, monthly morning breakfast meetings because that's the time in Bangalore when everyone can reach a destination without much traffic at 8 a.m. in the morning. So that's how we met. And as you know from knowing Pankaj, that people who are drawn to him, they may you may find uh, people of your own thinking, and Pankaj knows all kinds. So Sarah and I sort of hit it off that way, and we've just sort of kept in touch. And from the days when she was at Danske Bank, I'd also remember visiting Danske Bank when the folks at headquarters would come over and talk about analytics and what was going on then. And Sarah has had a very rich journey from then on, as I've observed from the sidelines. She then moved to Citibank and was driving analytics over there. In the midst of it, she also, co-authored a chapter for Wiley's Black Book on emerging technologies. She's been a speaker on several circuits, and uh, that unique combination of EQ, of high tech, of actually deploying analytics and bringing people, technology, processes together. I think it's been great to see her deftly navigate her way to now the head of Lightcast and their GCC in India. So it's unfortunately we haven't been able to meet as often as we'd like to, but it's great to be sharing time and space with her through this Zoom call. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, Ravi. Pleasure to be here on a Monday morning. It takes away the blues you want to beat on Monday morning. Thanks for having me. My pleasure to be here. And like Ravi, Nidhi said, we go a long way back. And what better way to start my day, talking to Nidhi than anything else. We've been planning to catch up, but it's good that you are bringing us together.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So we have a title, a branded title for this podcast: Code, Culture, and Country: Building Impact from the Inside Out. That's the title. So typically, we've got four themes. We're looking at GCCs as catalyst for strategic transformation. That's theme number one. We look at power of analytics in decision making. That's theme number two. Inclusive leadership and building people power. And finally, reinventing self through rules, learning, and ecosystem building. Those are the four themes, Saraswati, that we're going to deal with. So let me start off with the first theme. We're looking at you actually leading large-scale GCC setups and expansions across global banks and tech organizations, and your work directly has shaped organization agility and resilience. So, basis that, a couple of questions we wanted to ask Saraswati. One is, what are the biggest mindset shifts needed to transform a GCC from a cost center to a value driver? And followed with that, how do you balance speed and stability when building technology and people infrastructure at scale?
Very interesting questions, Ravi. Um, I'll answer in two separate buckets because there are multiple questions there. I am more of an interactive person, so I'll keep asking you questions as well while
Sure.
answer because I think that's what keeps me learning as well. So, um, Ravi, whether we like it or not, I think India has evolved from the services mindset, and we are extremely good at it. There's nothing wrong, right? Um, we are very good at every service that we provide, whether it is IT or otherwise, right? People from across countries come to us because they experience the serviceability we provide in the tourism, as an example. So we have been extremely good at services. Now, I think what we have carried over is the same mindset in the GCC, saying, hey, I will provide service to you. For us to be looking at value center, of course, we have started moving from in-house captive to saying, okay, we are capability center. But then moving to an innovation center or a value center that, like you asked, requires a mindset change. It's not just operating model change, so to say, right? It's complete mindset change. Anything that requires cultural or mindset change is the hardest to break. And in my experience, that takes the longest, right? At least when I talk about mindset, I see 5 different things that we need to do. We've always been saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Nidhi, you have enough and more experience with similar things, right? We have always been saying we provide reliability, we deliver fast, we are able to scale up people very fast. But we don't say, hey, we are able to innovate at scale. We are always talking about delivery at scale. How do we move to innovation at scale, right? That's a mindset change. Instead of saying, hey, we will deliver whatever you give, how do we start innovating in everything that we do? And we talk about it. To me, it's moving from how fast we can deliver to how fast we can co-create. And that starts from the top, it starts from the leadership, right? We'll have to start talking about it in everything that we do. Also, it's, I'm not being judgmental here, but give me the list of tasks and we will deliver, right? It's task ownership. How do we move from task ownership to what is the outcome we want? Start asking, why are we doing what are we doing? And how do we connect the dots? And one big advantage India has is because of cost arbitrage or whatever, we actually have every department sitting with us in GCCs. Which might not be true in other places, right? In other locations, you actually have people sitting in various, they don't even get to meet each other. We have that big advantage. And what we have realized is for us, hybrid works so much better. So when we are together, instead of sitting and looking at our own tasks, can we look at how do we connect these dots? And that's so important because if we can connect these dots, that's when we start to realize the value. That's when we start to realize the outcome. And that to me is another mind shift change that we have to look at. Because when teams start talking about language of outcome, it impacts the revenue, it impacts the customer retention because we start to understand customers much more. And it naturally elevates us from, hey, we delivered this task to much higher position on the table. People start to listen to us. And that ownership starts from us, right? And the third important thing is we say we are supporting organization to the parent. Fantastic. And we should always be. But can we be shaping that global strategy instead of just saying I'm supporting the global strategy? Too often we start to look at ourselves as extended arm, which is good. We absolutely have to support the strategy. But can we partner on the strategy? I completely believe we have the knowledge, we have the capability to be the partners. And that's when we start adding the value. So a shift in mindset of the GCC leader to proactively bring market intelligence, operational insights, innovation opportunities at the global leadership meetings changes the value of how we are perceived. To me, these are important. Obviously, we have moved away from resource arbitrage, cost arbitrage to more of capability hubs. I think we are already there. And most importantly, the last one to me is how do we own cost revenue, right? We look at piecemeals. Just as an example, we look at each department cost, but how do we bridge this and say, and just in terms of analytics also, I can give you a little bit more insight of how do we look at ROI. So if something has been invested in India, how do we start measuring ROI holistically? And how do we show the value we are bringing, not what we are delivering? Because we often look at GCC as a cost center. can we look at it more like an enterprise where we take ownership of each of the businesses and say what value we are giving, not what we are delivering? To me, that is why it's a mind shift change rather than just operating model change. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense or resonating with you, but happy to hear your insight, Ravi and Nidhi, as well. Because
And is it to think about, earlier people would sort of wait to be called upon or want permission to be able to suggest ideas? I think that has started changing because one, it's sort of in the nature of the new generation itself. Two, there definitely needs to be a top-down, uh, not a mandate, but a feeling that, we are capable, we can do it. If you have ideas, put them on the table and don't shy away from it. And at the same time, having that dialogue with the mothership, so to speak, that that there are innovations and ideas coming from here that can make a significant change. And I think in as you talked about that co-location, right? I think people who come from the headquarters, they just find the Indian ecosystem so vibrant because one, people are in their seats. There's so many of them. There is youth. There is energy and ideas, and which is the perfect, petri dish for things to start happening. So it's just that some blessings are needed for that.
obviously, you're bang on, Nidhi, because we cannot go in a tangential way. We have to be
Yeah.
aligned in our strategy, what we want to achieve as an outcome together. But it's also putting our thoughts on the table without shying away from the fact that we are just, um, without saying that we are just delivering, but how else can we make difference, right?
Mhm.
When it comes to capability, I think there's no doubt in anybody's head globally. And that's why India has been looked at, right? Saying
Yeah.
what kind of capability we have. But just shifting that mindset, like you said, is so important. And today's generation asks for purpose. So I think there's no better day and time where we are actually moving into that transformation mode than now.
Yeah, I think of those days back in late 90s, right, when I think GHSVC came on board to Hyderabad. I think that's when it all started. And when I actually entered the HSBC back in 2002, all I could see the leadership was they were in awe of their bosses back in the UK. So strategy was laid down in the UK, and as you're telling, right, we're basically experts in delivery, and that's been the case for over 25, 30 years now. So that mindset is that okay, you give me something, I'm going to give you 100% delivery.
Yeah.
Now, for the same person who is a leader now, as senior vice president or the head of the company, 30 years, you have one particular mindset, and now you're saying innovate, which means, as you rightly said, he or she has to actually think very differently than before. And if the head of the company doesn't innovate, it boils down to everyone, right? So it has to start from the top, as you very rightly said. So my view is definitely, I think, significant mindset change from a delivery model to an creativity, innovation model. And I remember Pankaj actually talking about AI tools, and Shiva was asking a lot of questions. And he said very particularly that using AI tools is not a big deal, right? We are pretty good at that, right from Y2K to Java, VB, or whatever, Python. We've been able to navigate all the technologies easily. And this is, AI is a new animal now, and we will anyway navigate there. But what's important is how creatively you want to use the tool, not just using the tool as such. So that is where I also thought, yeah, I think we need more of innovation creativity in the mindset piece at a top level. That will actually help drive very, very differently our enterprises. So that's my view.
Yeah. And Ravi, humbleness to say that, Ravi, you're probably an expert at it. Tell me the ideas, right? And not shut you down. Because
Absolutely.
I think a lot of youngsters have brilliant idea. They're very creative. They're purpose driven. They understand. They are I mean, we were not even digital first. They are AI first. They're born in that era. So they understand, right? Just hearing from them and giving that platform makes a lot of difference. Instead of how many head count do you have, can we pivot to what value we are adding, right? Because if we have always thought about head count as our kingdom, then it's a lost game,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
GCC transformation.
Absolutely. I think maybe I'll quote one example. There was this new podcast series which I thought was brilliant. So I named it The Darbar, and it landed upon LinkedIn. That's what normally happens. And there's a WhatsApp group between Nidhi, Pankaj, and us. So just one line he wrote that, Darbar means there is a boss, there's a king, and there's a subject. And all of us are learners. The leader is a learner, and even the subject is a learner. So when I read it, I took some time to understand where is he coming from. So he's saying the leader is a learner. The reportee, as you rightly said, the youngsters are also learners. And there's equality over there. So that is where, when I see him interacting with a lot of youngsters across the board, his ideas are very, very fresh because every day he's speaking to two people now. And obviously, I think that is something which every leader has to do. He or she has to interact with the youngsters to understand where they're coming from because they have fresh ideas that they have. If they can pick up one or two, I think there's a huge transformation which can actually happen.
Easier solution, Ravi, clone Pankaj.
Yeah.
Nidhi, over to you. The
Yeah.
second theme is yours.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I
So,
didn't answer the other question.
Go
You
ahead.
talked
Go
about
ahead. Yeah.
balance of speed and stability.
go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
To me, these are not different things, right? When we are building technology or people or infrastructure at scale, it's not friction between one against the other. It's not a problem to be solved, at least in my head. It's more of a rhythm that we need to master between the two. And again, it comes from mindset shaped by my journey and the mindset shift because it has to be intentional. It has to build for today and now and also next. So it has to be an intentional design where in scaling this, we often get obsessed with speed of delivery, speed of getting things. But with that, actually, we build fragility, which will break eventually. So one thing I have learned, and then this goes back to my MS days of system architecture, where we deliberately built modularity, and that was the best. And then we have seen these architectures, right? SOA and microservices. That works brilliantly, right? So while we are designing technology and we think of these system architectures, which are loosely coupled, for me, it's how you build people also. We have to build the fact to me when we say team is not everybody same, right? Every team I've built consciously made sure each one of them bring complementary skills. They have a modular skills which complements, but they have distinct capability because these components evolve independently. They all bring a different set of diverse perspectives to the table. And then if something fails, it's contained. I might fail in a certain thing, but it is still contained. And then through this, innovation actually happens parallelly. So, like tech systems where we don't build monoliths, to me, people also are similar, right? Where we bring in different skills, which helps in decision making much faster.
Absolutely.
And of course, it all boils down to also cultural resiliency that we are able to build. How do we bring in a high psychological safety and bring in decision velocity through this? Um, when we think about speed, it's always the thought is how do we do things faster? But at least in my head, real speed comes from decision velocity. How fast as team we can make good decisions. Because good decisions actually bring down to a lot of good execution, good faster delivery, everything that we can think of, right? But if you don't have that psychological safety, people won't decide quickly, then either it gets escalated or delayed and it loses the momentum. So to me, as a techie, modularity is important. That's what I've been taught when I was studying. And building our team like a system which is modular, resistant, and graceful um, is important as well. So ultimately, speed and stability to me is not opposing force, but more like breathing, where we breathe in and breathe out, which coexist. We need to be able to do both to be able to sustain and scale. That's at least what is in my head of how I see scale and uh, sustainability.
Sure, Saraswati. Thank you.
And I think the whole approach to sprints and all of that sort of encapsulates, the ability to have speed and stability at the same time, and the complementarity that you're talking about. And you mentioned that, in the end, what you're looking at is how effective the decision making process can be. And so coming to that, if you look at, the whole journey of analytics, and we started off with very limited data sets that were available, then explosion and big data, and now we are at AI. So, I mean, when you ask a new grad whether they've done analytics or not, or AI or not, how they interpret it has changed so much over the years.
Right.
But anyway, there has been this journey, and more and more newer technologies available to us. While at the same time, you find legacy systems and organizations trying to adopt all of those, but at the same time, the business leadership is used to, array, pull this report for me or pull that report for me. And there is still a lot of Excel, PowerPoint, everything rampant. So there is a mishmash, and that mishmash keeps getting added with newer, startups coming, newer functionality. So how do you sift through all this clutter in order to, have analytics continue to inform decision making? In obviously there is a very pure interpretation you may have, but nothing is very clean. So how do you think of driving analytics towards enabling decision making in this cluttered landscape today?
I think you've said it all, Nidhi. You know, we are a data rich, many organizations, right? Data rich organization, but decision poor organizations. That's what we have become. We are collecting data, yeah, like you said, from small data to big data to the investment we are making on data collation, aggregation of data is huge. But what decision we take, to a large extent, if you do a deep dive, 80% of the organization is still doing reporting. Yes, we don't need to shift entire thing. We still need historical data and insights, but 80% to me is a big number that we need to move the needle, right? Again, uh, to me, things start with culture, mindset. We organizations often tend to treat data from a rear view mirror. But we live in a GPS world, right? Where GPS is guiding us on a real time. And that's how decision needs to be done. But when it actually comes to analytics at our organization level, we are not using it as GPS. We are using it as a rear view mirror. We need to change that mindset. It's not just systems. Systems change, technology change. As long as we are clear about what is it that we want, whether it is AI today or something else tomorrow, that can be achieved. I have seen where we sit in business reviews, data gets very passively reviewed. But if we can just force it for more actionable, because today data, when we look at it from a historical perspective, to me, at the best, it's an ornament purpose. It's not orchestrating actionable insights. It's happening, but it's happening in the POCs, as POCs, not at a enterprise level, which is what we would want to do, right? A simple example, when we do a performance review, right? HR analytics, for example, we have all the insights we want. What has been the attrition? What is the retention heat map? What has been the engagement score? Skill adjacency when it comes to analytics. Have they done career moves? Have they upskilled? But when we sit in performance reviews, it's the manager saying, hey, I have seen and I believe potential, all of those. But if we look at this data as an integrated decision in the performance reviews, instead as an afterthought, and if we embed this in everyday discussion, saying, tell me by data, not by your instincts. I think that changes the game. I'm taking a very simple example, right? And often data is kept as a gatekeeping um, in the organizations, and rightly so, right? We need to guard the data. But analysts can have that data access, business users do not understand. And somewhere in between, we are pumping a lot of data. It is very intimidating for the person who is actually looking at it. In one of my previous organization, we started what is called the consumer producer model. Whoever is consuming is also producing. Right? That changes the game of how everybody starts looking at data. And that I felt was a brilliant move. And then, of course, there is a deeper problem, which is the leadership blind spot, like you said. It's a misaligned incentive, right? Uh, we, as leaders, often have heard and said, we want data-driven decision, but we still reward, um, reward system is risk averse. It's conscience-driven decisions. I think aligning those as leaders will really help fast track some of this. Then, like you said, there is organization muscle memory. By habit, I do this. It's not something that I consciously want to change. And any change is not an easy thing to happen, right? It is how do we rewire the organization to think data first and opinion second versus opinion first versus data second. That shift in the mindset, I think there are few organizations which have done brilliantly, right? Microsoft, for example, I think they are a long way to go. They are showing the path. Salesforce, they've embedded a lot of things in every decision, every product. Integration has happened in the way that analytics is embedded, AI is embedded in every product. So we need to build that culture where it's okay to be wrong, but it's not okay to be unclear. We need to be very, very clear about data bringing clarity, and faster we are able to do that, better we move to that, right? I think as leaders, we can push the data to the edge when, like I said, every consumer being the producer of the data, not just central dashboard where everybody consumes it and without knowing. In meetings, how can we ask data-driven decisions? It starts from all of us. And how do we reward the data-led behaviors instead of opinion? So those 2, 3 things, if we start doing and we create that ripple effect, and I think it starts from all of us, organizationally, when something is really gone well, everybody starts to percolate or observe and start to see that. And nobody can debate the data, right? Of course, there are 2 ways to look at data, but with the right data, you cannot debate. So I think it starts with all of us asking the right question and doing the right things as well.
Yeah. And I think that closing that loop, because often, as you said, when you get focused on delivery, it's like, okay, something was created and certain decisions were taken, but then 2 weeks later or a month later, how did that decision pan out? What was the business outcome? And then, seeing that take shape makes it more impactful to create that, virtuous cycle.
Absolutely. Nidhi, the people sitting and delivering analytics solution don't even know what's happening to that.
Yeah.
There's no feedback, and literally I've seen teams chasing for that feedback, but it doesn't come through. So somebody who is sitting there and delivering, they don't understand what's happening in the outcome. It is not going to drive enterprise level
Because the
decision.
story doesn't, there's a pause. Yeah.
But there is always somebody sitting in the middle who can always question, say, hey, why don't you put this data? Why don't you close the loop? And that is what needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And also, again, if we start looking at the value and the ROI, for example, we look at these analytical solution and say, hey, this model is this accurate, whatever percentage of accuracy is. And through this campaign, we are able to capture so much market share. But what we are not able to say is, is this giving me the ROI I want? When I talk about ROI, I've invested so much on analytical solution, but it's often we only look at what is the resource and what model performance is. We don't look at how much have we invested on data ingestion, because it's end-to-end stack, right?
Yeah.
How much have we invested on data quality?
Mm.
Now, to build this analytical model, and
Mm.
what is the end-to-end that I've invested?
Mm.
Pipeline, CI/CD, and then in saying what is my data storage capacity? If we
Mm.
put all of these things, am I actually giving the ROI that the organization has invested in me? We are still working in very siloed approach,
Yeah.
saying I'm an analytics team and I will just deliver the solution, right?
Yeah.
The day we start to think end-to-end stack and
Mhm.
say, this is what is the investment organization is making, and that requires investment from my end in terms of time. It's like, okay, I need to collaborate with everybody and be able to tell this. And this is the outcome we are getting. That I think changes the game. So while we expect the leadership to be more involved in terms of how we are closing the loop and how we are actually asking the data-driven questions, teams also thinking it's not just one solution, it's end-to-end stack, I think changes a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a great point, because often like you just think that, okay, this is happening in technology and I don't worry about it because I'm just looking at a small piece of that journey that the data takes, you know. Yeah.
And one aspect which I was thinking while Saraswati was talking is the ability to question. And I picked it up from Pankaj talking about it, that as a culture, if you look at it, Indians especially, parents teach us right from when they're children not to disobey. That's don't disobey us. And so we shut up our mouth and we don't ask questions. And as we grow up into organizations as professionals, I think that's something which we carry. If the boss says something, okay, let's do it, rather than questioning back. So I think that aspect of us has to change, where once we become a leader, or even doesn't matter whether you're a leader or not, but as a team member of a particular project, you need to be open enough to question, and consistently questioning and the right questions for that over a period of time actually changes the kind of mindset that people have for that particular project. That's just one.
No, absolutely, Ravi. But again, we should have the right leader also for that, right? A right leader. And to me, a bell curve is a good way to fit everything. We always have such people in the organization, and that's, beginning of the bell curve, the high performers, not necessarily high performance in terms of delivery, the complementary skills that I was talking about. There are people who question, but if they're shut down often by a leader, then they just go away, right? They fade. So it is a two-way street where as leaders, we should also be open to understanding they're asking the right questions for right reasons and don't get intimidated, right? And that 25% then, or even the 5-10% high performers then percolates that culture to the organization. So it starts again with some of us being open to the fact that there are smarter people. They have to ask those questions. And I'm a firm believer of next generation.
Mm.
And I see them asking all right questions. And if you see how they've been brought up today, I don't think they've been brought up to say, yes, masters, right?
Yeah.
They actually ask every single thing saying, why? Why do we need to do this? So I see a bright future of that changing in the coming days.
Yeah.
And when we are actually hiring more Gen Zs, and they're all asking this question, they will push us as leaders to start thinking and making that change.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. I think moving on to inclusive leadership and building the people power. You are a DI champion and have actually built high performance teams while aligning talent to purpose. Couple of questions, Saraswati, are how do you create a culture where diversity is not just represented but truly heard and empowered? And what's the role of leadership in ensuring psychological safety? I think you did touch upon it, and continuous growth in large tech teams.
Yeah, very close to my heart, this topic, especially not because it's DEI, but because we have to build an equitable society, right? And that comes, I think it's a great thing that we started with a checklist saying, hey, we need to hire so many people across different categories, because somewhere number starts to push a lot of things. So, and then what other ways, when we were talking about analytics and everything, so numbers actually make a lot of difference, right? To a large extent, and I'm not going to be diplomatical or anything here, I'm just going to be as candid. To a large extent, these numbers were driven by the top, and the middle level managers never understood why it's happening, right? Demographics are changing. When in a society where naturally there could be more women, they were killed before they were born. Obviously, there were more men than women, but that has started to change. If we just leave it to nature, there will be more women. So if you just follow the marketing trends and look at the numbers today, from consumption to spend to decision, everything, a lot more women are making. So the middle level managers, when they don't understand why this is there, it becomes a checklist activity. So you're given the seat on the table saying, hey, we have hired a diversity candidate in whatever category. I'm not just talking about females, right? That itself, somebody who is deserving. I always used to question saying, why don't you call the other gender diversity? Right? Because we are all equal. You don't say a female leader or a male leader. It should be leader. So why are we not making it gender agnostic? Why are we adding titles to these, right? Just being cognizant about it and questioning basics of these things. I think we can change some of those. And representation on the table is just an entry to the ticket, is an entry ticket, right? Actually, inclusion starts where people are allowed to speak. And often I have seen, even though we are talking about, and I don't have to quote the percentage, we are all aware, we still have very few female leaders on the C-suites or even the leadership level, right? So if you're one of those, and there are many of the, and you're not heard, that is not being inclusive. I have seen very, very often that somebody with a loud voice and having that connect with another leader often gets their ideas be heard rather than hearing to other. And this is not again male female, because I've seen a lot of male colleagues who are not necessarily aggressive, right? Who are not necessarily loud, but even their voices are not heard, right? So does loud mean you're the best person on the table? Not necessarily. Does spending time outside and building that rapport mean that you are the best person? Not necessarily. But that's where I think collectively we need to start asking that question. One of the mistakes that I have seen leaders confuse is presence with power. Just because you have a diverse people in the room, it doesn't mean that you've built a system where their perspectives are actually shifting the direction in which we are moving, right? It's especially where we have a lot of hierarchy in the organization. People with diverse experience are technically there, but their ideas are often quite sidelined. I remember reading this book, and it has stuck to me for all good reasons, which is Peacock in the Land of Penguins, or something similar. It's a brilliant book, and I'll just take a few seconds to talk about that book, right? If you just look at the cover page of it, every penguin is in the black and white suit. And there is this peacock with brilliant feathers and colors. So at some point of time, penguins decide, hey, we need to have a diverse thought, diverse person. They bring in this peacock, and peacock is all colorful, brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of thoughts. But penguins are like, this is not who we want. And peacock tries and tries and tries, and then says, should I become a penguin? Right? And it's a small book, but brilliantly well written.
Yeah.
So as long as we ourselves are penguins, no matter how many peacocks we bring in, and we've built a forte of penguins, we don't change anything. So I think psychological safety is very key to changing this. And I have seen that personally change, right? Where I have been part of the teams where I've been blessed to have some managers who have brought in that safety. And they never made us feel that you're so and so, you're male, you're female. It's just that you are here to deliver the best outcome. And go experiment, fail. I'm there to protect you. So there's no discussion of gender anywhere. It's just being inclusive. Moment we start to bifurcate, that's where the problem starts. It's it's how do we just remove that barrier and just make everybody feel they are equal. That's very, very important. And then also giving ownership. We also have come with its preconceived bias or notion saying that, hey, he or she might not be able to do something, right? How do we give ownership? It's okay. It's okay to fail. I think it's a misconception that everybody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes. We all have to learn from that mistake. Giving that ownership and giving the opportunity of representation with it, because representation without ownership is hollow. You just make somebody a peacock and ask them to sit there, which doesn't mean anything, right? Just for example, empowering local managers to hire. We often say this is a position, but we need all chain of people to approve. And we also go to global teams saying, hey, approve somebody from India. But the culture in India is very, very different. Right? How do we start making these small changes? Ultimately, it's designing a system where people don't have to fight to be heard. They are heard. Right? That's what matters. And how do we start moving that needle is where I think it all starts from within. Simple things like sponsoring people to do things beyond. Not everybody needs to do the same thing. Or just hearing them out and saying, okay, I'm listening to you, I'm there. And creating that safety net for people. That's important. Feedback culture, not just downwards, but upwards. That changes the game a lot. How do we observe microaggression? How do we create whole audit around microaggression behavior and start fine-tuning that? Because these are small nuances that can put off people. And being able to... Sorry.
No, I was just thinking, and sometimes in order to be politically correct, I think that frank and direct supportive feedback does not come through, which may happen in that more casual after work sutta session or bar session, those kind of things. So I think that is also an art, how to give the right feedback that doesn't lead to, because sometimes people hold back thinking if I say this, it will get misconstrued and may lead to some other, unwanted repercussions. Yeah.
And silence at the same time is very dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially in the big teams, we just need to be cognizant of why somebody is always quiet. Have they been sidelined? We just constantly need to observe that. There are a lot of times at least like going back to the culture that we talked about, right? Where we are not taught to challenge in school days. We are not taught to challenge parents. We have often seen people say, yes, yeah, we'll do it, and don't necessarily challenge. Observing those patterns and then having a deeper discussions with them, saying, hey, it's okay, you have to come outright and say this is not possible. Not just in terms of delivery, right? But crafting that individual and systematic growth loops where as a leader, you build that culture, and then you have that succession or the managerial layer where they are also able to bring that um, individual focus in terms of we need to see that learning shaping up. We need to see that mastery coming up, not necessarily in terms of just delivery, but in terms of everything that we do. And that is part of how we build that inclusive culture, is how I see it. It's not about psychological safety, is not about being nice. Uh, it should never be construed as, hey, I'm all good to you, I'm all nice, I'll always speak flowery language. It's really about creating that environment or culture or climate where truth can be spoken and learning can actually thrive. And as leadership job is to invite that truth, not just agreement. It's a it's not it's really moving away from I know it all culture to I learn it all culture. Because when I say I am vulnerable, I am going to learn from what you are going to say, instead of saying, hey, I know it and you listen to me. I think that changes how everybody perceives us.
Yeah.
And rewarding those behaviors is also important, not just outcome, because there are high performers who will deliver everything really well, but the behavior might not be what we want, right? So while outcome is always rewarded, how do we start recognizing that behavior? Because there are people who will go out of the way to do things. They are more inclusive leaders. So do we build outcome leaders, outcome driven leaders, or do we also bring in behavioral leaders? Because these are complementary skills we will need to build the right culture of the organization. So it's really about managing the emotional climate in what really happens at work, not just managing work. Did I
Ravi, you must have seen this a lot in your leadership talent pipeline.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just reminded. I was just thinking whether I should actually say it or not, because every time I'm listening to you, Saraswati or Nidhi, something which Pankaj has said or Atif has said is coming to my mind. So recently, just 2 weeks back, we did a dual lens with both Pankaj and Atif, and Atif had a question. The second segment is questioning, and he said, I find it very strange that Pankaj, you are conversant with everyone across the board. All the teams are perfectly aligned to what you normally say. I don't see people, conflict. Conflict doesn't actually arise with Pankaj. Why is it? How is it that you're able to manage? So, I mean, he did answer. I don't want to reveal that because it's yet to be released kind of a video. But I think, as you rightly said, I think it starts from the top. If the leader has the maturity to understand that he's a learner, he or she is a learner, and everyone is in the pipeline also developing their own talent, right? He actually gives, and you spoke about it, that we need to uh, let people fail. I sit in talent management. Uh, we can't have everyone successful, right? The most of the learning actually happens when someone actually fails. And if we don't allow failure in our system, in our talent management system, putting people on PIP when they fail, what are we telling the entire organization? That this guy has failed, so we're putting on a PIP, which means, everyone is afraid. They think we have to be successful every time, and humanly it's impossible. So I think mature leaders on the top always actually help drive the learning agility. From a talent manager perspective, we love such leaders around. So much to learn. So yeah, that's
and
just my view.
and one thing why everybody is so comfortable with Pankaj is because he's not judgmental, and that I think is a great leadership quality, right? If we have that preconceived judgmental attitude, nobody wants to come because they don't have that safety to be able to talk. So I think there's lots to learn from him anyways.
So Nidhi, the last segment is
So
yours.
yeah, I think it touches upon these themes because but it's getting a little more personal about your journey, Sarah, and how did you evolve as a leader through the many roles you had? And I think at that particular point of time, there may have been a certain reason why you moved from one organization to another. But often when you look back, you realize that, okay, this is what gap this particular place filled for me. This is what I learned over here. And you may not have moved for that precise reason. So, when you look back, how is it that were there certain areas that you thought that, okay, this is what I need to add to my toolkit, and this is how I should evolve, and the charting of your path, how would you describe it?
Nidhi, by nature, I want to do something different constantly. Right? From where I started, I think first job is where you learn the most and where you love the most, right? At some point of time, I stayed probably the longest in the first job also. But at some point of time, I said, been here, done that, right? Now, what I've learned here, how do I take it forward to the next organization? Or how do I take it and develop on the top of it is where I moved. And that's what I did from Wipro to Accenture, whatever I'd learned in the middleware technologies. Started, building that whole middleware technologies and working for solutioning to clients based on that whole capability that we had built. Just starting that whole capability of middleware technologies with two people to growing a team to 200 plus organization, working on RFPs to get those clients have all been new learnings, right? But just keeping that core of what I'd learned on the middleware technologies or the technology stack, and then building on the top of it is what excited me to the next move. And then from there, saying, okay, I've been in services, India-based MNC, now what else can I do? Then it was like, okay, can I experiment something in the product organization? So if you see, I have moved from services to product to GCC because I'm constantly saying, what else can I actually learn? It's not what I've done, and I don't want to repeat the same thing, right? So I make the career move when curve flattens, not in terms of just the vertical growth, but in terms of my own learning. Am I doing the same thing over and over again? If it becomes the same thing, I by nature don't like to, because I just feel I'm just sitting there and occupying the table. So that's when I start to see, okay, how do I build my team in such a way that I am redundant there? And then I move. And then move to the next curve of learning. Am I solving the same problem again? Is it the same playbook, right? You can build customer life value for one vertical to another vertical to another. Of course, it's exciting with the new data, but is it the same playbook I'm repeating? Or I need to do something else, right? To me, how am I recycling my own solution from where I started? If it's becoming repetitive, then that's also time where I see, okay, what else can I do? Of course, we all have some aspirations in our life. At least every time I take up a role, I have aspirational value of what else I want to do in the next few years. Is it aligning with what I'm doing today? Is it aligning with where I want to go? And how do I keep pivoting to that is also important to me. And of course, what value I'm adding to the organization, right? Company grows, market changes, leadership shifts, all these are constant. What used to be rewarded before may not be true for tomorrow. But am I adding value through all of these changes is important. And in some sense, when I'm not adding value, when I'm not learning new things, am I a bottleneck or am I a catalyst in this change? That also I keep constantly looking at. Because if I am a bottleneck in the sense that the growth is not happening, then it's time for me to move and allow that space. But if I'm catalyst in the org change that is happening and I'm part of the cultural change that I need to bring in, then that's a brilliant place. Then I don't change. And to me, evolution isn't just always about job. It's sometimes about mindset, culture. You know, it's time to evolve when you think, decide, or lead. That isn't working in the new context, right? Um, how do we change from, a more, when initial days of my leadership where I was thought control is everything, because I first started doing project management. In project management, everything is control driven, right? You need to make sure everything is done on time. To how do I move to better leadership? That's an evolution. So there are multiple angles to it. Uh, but then knowing my aspiration and knowing that I'm actually adding value and learning is important to me in everything. And somewhere it's a Indianized way of thinking, right? Mind, body, soul. It's the heart, head, and the system to me. Those three lens I keep checking. Am I still learning? Am I still aligned to what matters to me? And more importantly, to the organization? And systematically, am I adding value? Those are my anchoring points. When any of these things go havoc, is when I know it's not the time. And obviously, the culture of the organization, it should not be toxic and things like that. And that's pretty common to everybody.
And a lot of this is self-evaluation and assessment, but what were the 2 or 3 things outside of you, like in your ecosystem around you, that have been a support, or that, people can think of that, okay, a lot lies within me, but where else do I go if I need some guidance?
Oh, yeah. I have been blessed that way, Nidhi. I have people like you, Pankaj, and many, many such people who I can always reach out to. Every day, I have friends calling and checking on saying, hey, how are you doing? Right? I think it's very important to build that ecosystem. Ecosystem where you have friends, where you have people who will be honest no matter how difficult the situation is. They're not painting a rosy picture. People who are your mentors, people who are your sponsors, but building that different kind of ecosystem, I think that has helped me navigate a lot of things. Because often, whether we like it or not, our head gets cluttered with our own thinking, and just talking to different people helps you declutter. There are very, very honest people who become friends over a period of time who will tell me on my face, no, this is not how it should be. You should evaluate this, right? Um, and then they leave the decision on me, but it helps me reflect. And you constantly need that input from different set of people. And we keep talking about diversity. This is where you need diverse input for ourselves also, because we otherwise have the same thinking, right? And um, like we say, I Vasudeva Kutumbam, when we used to have a broader family. Now, of course, we have gone nuclear, right? We used to have a lot of people giving inputs. It can be a very irritating factor if you just look at it from the other way. But then the diverse thought that people used to bring in based on their experience used to define who we become, right? Now, with that gone, building that ecosystem around you, who are your friends, who are your guides, mentors, right? That helps re-emerge what we have lost in the system. To me, that has kept going. And influence that comes outside of your function, you obviously need that, because those are the shift in realizing our own strategic leadership, because it brings that cross-functional value that we keep talking about. So it's very important we build that relationship outside of our immediate teams. That has really helped me shape who I am. And I'm grateful to every one of these people in my life. Um, there are there are days where um, I thought I need to give up, but those are the times for people who come and say, you're not that weak, and that helps you build confidence. Every day people check on you to see if you're doing the right thing or saying if things are happening in the way. It's important for you to build that confidence and resilience in you. So every single interaction with these people matter. And it also, more importantly, helped me redefine my own leadership language, right? Uh, because I'm constantly learning from there. Everybody brings in a different perspective. Everybody brings in a strength that I don't necessarily have. But every interaction with these people redefine my moments, my language, the way I think, and there is no substitute for this. Uh, I
True,
think
true.
that is
Yeah,
that is what has defined me who I am. Like
yeah,
I can't be more thankful to each one of them.
yeah.
Thanks a lot for that, Saraswati. I think every leader everywhere in the corporates should listen to what you just said. Because people are feeling alone in the corporate, and I'm getting calls from some of the leaders saying that we actually put a mask, not a physical mask, but a mental mask before they enter the corporate because they can't be themselves. And listening to the influence outside the scope of your work and having people where they give their opinion, which is very diverse to what you actually have, changes something within. And it is so great to actually have some friends check on you, saying that how are you doing. It's wonderful support, right? I mean, they need not be part of your company, but it's wonderful ecosystem that you actually said. So thanks so much for sharing that.
And it's absolutely wrong when people say it's lonely on the top.
Mhm.
I've realized it's absolutely not lonely when you have the right set of people around you. So
Absolutely.
And also, like when people say networking is, but there is an art where it just happens naturally, and then you realize that okay, it's not a forced activity, but it's just being with people, being yourself, and then somehow the magic happens. Yeah.
it's an
Absolutely.
So my
investment. It's an investment, but it's worth
yeah.
every single second.
Yeah. But the last thing I wanted to talk about or ask you is that, now that you are heading a GCC, are there things that you said that, oh, I had really wanted to do something in this way, or now that I have the platform, I want to achieve either the why or the how or the what, something that you're really looking forward to doing because of, where you are right now?
Absolutely, Nidhi. One thing I wanted to always do is build in transparency
Hmm.
and build in a culture where everybody is equal. Um, we all come from different background. Some of us are privileged, more privileged than what we think.
Hmm.
Some of us don't have that set of thing, but then just driving everything based on how good you are as a performer. Of course, performance is rewarded in organization the way it should be. But on a day-to-day basis, how do you change the culture to say you are treated equally, irrespective? You are respected, you're valued, irrespective of the work you do. To me, that is one thing I wanted to change, and hopefully, I'm doing that in what I'm doing today because that is defining culture of who we are as an organization, and that starts from each one of us. So, changing that culture was important to me, both in terms of transparency and respecting everybody. Constantly trying to do that. Hopefully, I'm successfully win this bit.
No, I'm sure the organization is really appreciating the change or the way that you are bringing, your leadership to everyone pretty much in the organization. So all the best to you and to Lightcast and onwards. Yeah.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, Ravi.
Thank you so much. So, a typical L&D workshop has got an outcome, right? So, I was just going through it. And I think, Saraswati, you met it. wonderfully, I should say. I think we explored how your visionary leadership, data-driven strategy, and inclusive culture building, how it actually transformed the technology outcomes and brought in the talent ecosystems as such. And you tapped into your more than 25 years of experience and shared a lot of insights, which will be so useful for the budding leaders across the corporate. A couple of objectives which I actually had and which you met 100% over there, as you actually shared insights on setting up and scaling GCC COEs with lasting impact. Uh, you helped understand how data analytics drive organizational decision making at scale, and you highlighted the role of DEI and inclusive leadership as such. So thanks a lot. It's been an inspirational one, and I love these podcast where it's so much of learning. And just like you had a ecosystem, you still have an ecosystem where people are adding so much of value just by being there and advising. I think the Monday Morning Learning podcast, the entire intent is basically to share what you have gone through, the tips and tricks to everyone across the board. So I think wonderful, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on board. Nidhi, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, all good. It was lovely being here with you. So hope to see you soon.
We should definitely meet in person, Nidhi, soon.
Yeah.
And Ravi, when I come to Hyderabad, I'll definitely ping you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we can conclude.
All right.
Pleasure
Have
being
a great Monday and a great week ahead.
same to you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.